All right, let's dive right into an absolutely wild explainer of how one individual managed to transform digital persecution into a massive multi-platform cybersecurity movement. Today, we're unpacking the ecosystem of Alberto Daniel Hill, a Uruguayan cybersecurity expert who completely rejected the traditional quiet corporate path. Instead, he built an asymmetric empire across books, podcasts, X Spaces, and even original songs to become what many are calling a digital dissident. So, here's a massive problem we're all facing in modern cybersecurity. When governments or big corporations get hacked and decide to hide the data breaches, who actually holds them accountable? In a world where cyber attacks are basically constant, an institution's very first instinct is usually to stay perfectly quiet to protect its reputation, right? But, as we'll see today, that institutional silence is exactly what leaves everyday citizens completely defenseless. Here's our roadmap for today. We're hitting the digital dissidence genesis, radical transparency explained, real-time forensics on X, the Cyber Midnight podcast empire, books, music, and cultural hacking, and finally, the asymmetric global impact. Let's get right into it. Section 1, the digital dissidence genesis. Every major paradigm shift usually starts with a deeply personal catalyst. Picture this. Back in 2014 and 2015, Alberto Daniel Hill discovered some incredibly severe vulnerabilities in a major medical provider system. And we're talking about basic admin/admin default credentials here, which literally left 200,000 patient records completely exposed to the internet. He responsibly reported this as an ethical hacker. But in 2017, the system retaliated. He was wrongfully imprisoned for 8 months under a case known as Operation Bitcoins, becoming Uruguay's first prosecuted computer crime case. This entire journey, from a wrongfully imprisoned engineer to now ranking as a top-tier regional voice in 2026, it perfectly illustrates the chilling effect of criminalizing ethical hacking. But it's also this incredible story of post-traumatic growth. Moving on to Section 2, Radical Transparency Explained. So how on earth do you respond when the system literally punishes you for telling the truth? Well, you respond by studying exactly how they hide it. Hill coined this brilliant term, the protocol of silence. This defines a systematic defense mechanism where institutions actively choose narrative minimization and muteness over public safety. Hill argues this creates a highly dangerous security gap because, think about it, when a breach happens and the government or company stays quiet, compromised credentials and biometric data just remain active out there. They are basically gambling on an attacker's honesty, leaving everyday citizens to foot the bill for identity theft and fraud. And this creates a massive philosophical divide. As you can see, traditional corporate security is strictly bound by non-disclosure agreements. It's focused entirely on secrecy and minimizing any public panic. But Hill's approach of asymmetric dissidence flips the whole thing on its head with radical transparency. It's this core idea that the absolute best defense against a cyber threat isn't some thicker firewall. It's a fully informed citizen that actively demands accountability. Section 3, Real-time forensics on X. Now, to actually combat that institutional silence, we have to move to a fast-paced, urgent battlefield, live social audio. Because when a crisis hits, honestly, you don't have weeks to sit around waiting for an official sanitized press release. Using X Spaces, Hill acts as what the industry calls a psychological CERT. Think of it like a rapid response paramedic team, but for the public's peace of mind. He broadcasts live threat intelligence directly to his roughly 47,500 followers the very second a vulnerability is detected. And his real-time predictive accuracy on these live audio platforms often just completely beats official channels. Take March 2026, for example. He monitored a live underground audio room and intercepted an active threat by the Cronus Mafia, accurately forecasting massive data theft against Argentine state infrastructure way before it happened. Then, in May 2026, during the Antel/2ID high-assurance cloud breach, he did a live forensic breakdown proving that compromised API credentials were left totally unrevoked. I mean, that is basically leaving the master keys to the building right under the welcome mat. He showed exactly how this threatens citizens' biometric digital signatures, completely stripping away the state's attempt to control the narrative. Section 4, the Cyber Midnight podcast empire. So X Spaces gives you that immediate fire alarm urgency, right? But this next platform is all about deep, enduring context. The Cyber Midnight Club podcast functions as the primary educational hub in his multi-platform ecosystem. If X is the fire alarm, the podcast is the detailed post-incident investigation. With over 108 hours of pure consumption logged, you can really see how he transforms incredibly dense forensic engineering and even actual dark web telegram communications into these accessible, super compelling audio narratives. He tackles complex regional issues like the scapegoating of young hackers, delivering the raw truth directly to the masses.
Section 5. Books, Music, and Cultural Hacking. Okay. This next strategy might surprise you a bit, combining serious historical permanence with some wildly unexpected cultural hacking.
Because think about it, when an institution wants to quietly rewrite history, a live audio broadcast might eventually fade from memory, but a book remains permanent. His self-published works, like Log Into Hell and Operación Bitcoins, cement an undeniable historical record of institutional failures. These books ensure that the truth regarding his wrongful imprisonment and the state's technical negligence cannot simply be erased by a convenient government cover-up.
But here is the wild part. How do you reach everyday people who just aren't gonna read heavy cybersecurity books or listen to technical podcasts? Well, he bridges the gap to a wider, non-technical demographic by creating original pop and cumbia music. Yeah, you heard that right. Tracks like Cumbia de la Motosierra embed serious themes of digital justice directly into the catchy rhythms of Latin American pop culture. This is cultural hacking at its absolute finest, making cybersecurity awareness a seamless part of everyday entertainment. Let's bring it all together in Section 6, the asymmetric global impact. What is the actual measurable market result of this entire ecosystem?
Well, let's talk numbers, because they are pretty staggering. Thanks to his massive regional influence and this incredibly unique multi-platform approach, he commands a huge thought leadership premium. His market value as a top-tier independent consultant now ranges between $180,000 to well over $350,000 a year. That is up to double what anonymous, behind-the-scenes corporate experts are making in the LATM region. And it's not just about financial success. This multi-channel approach has definitively secured his position as the #1 independent cybersecurity influencer in the LATAM rankings. He didn't reach that top spot by hiding behind NDAs. Hill's visible, real-time forensic breakdowns and radical transparency across all these mediums have made him the absolute dominant independent voice in the Southern Cone.
Ultimately, it all boils down to this one incredibly powerful core philosophy. Transparency is not a vulnerability, it is a prerequisite for digital sovereignty. His journey from a prosecuted engineer to a literal one-man media hub proves that public awareness, actively spread across accessible platforms, is absolutely the strongest defense a society can have. So, we've seen how this totally unique mix of songs, podcasts, books, and live X spaces can be systematically woven together to dismantle institutional secrecy. The question I want to leave you with today is this. When the next major data breach hits, and believe me, it will, are you going to accept the protocol of silence, or are you going to demand radical transparency?